Do you know the difference between he perdido las llaves and se me han perdido las llaves? Up next, I'm going to show you why this se plus me structure is so common in Spanish. And we'll also see a few verbs where you can see the difference in action. This video is a bit more advanced, but trust me, it's absolutely worth it. Empezamos! Let's get straight to it. When you say he perdido las llaves, I have lost the keys, you're not saying anything wrong. This is completely correct grammatically. But the important thing to know is that with this structure, you're actually taking more responsibility for losing the keys. You are the subject of the sentence. I have lost the keys. So you lost them, and that's why we use the I form of the verb. He perdido. I have lost. But if instead you say se me han perdido las llaves, what's going on here? First of all, notice the verb han perdido. That is, they have lost. So in this sentence, the keys, las llaves, are the subject, and that is why the verb is in the third person plural. But we also have the pronoun se at the beginning, and this se relates to the subject and is always se. It never changes regardless of whether the subject is singular or plural. Think of it as a fixed part of this structure. Then, after this se, we have the indirect object pronoun. In this case, me, meaning to me. So, se me han perdido las llaves is in a way as if we were literally saying something like, the keys have lost themselves to me. But of course, in more natural English, this is, my keys got lost. The interesting thing is that when we use this structure, we're adding a sense of accident, a sense of unpredictability. This is something that happened beyond your control and you don't feel fully responsible. It is as if the keys lost themselves and you were the unfortunate victim. That sounds a bit dramatic, but it's actually a structure that the Spanish language uses a lot. Now, you might be thinking, does this mean that Spanish speakers just don't like taking responsibility for their actions? Well, no, it has nothing to do with that, but this structure is simply a more natural way of expressing something that slipped out of your control, something that happened to you. Now, perder is not the only verb that can work this way. Let's look at another one. Romper, to break. And you'll see the exact same logic in action. So if I say rompí el móvil, that is, I broke the phone, and I'm taking responsibility, that's why I'm using the I form of the verb. In this case, the preterite rompí. But what if I wanted to distance myself from the blame and convey that this was more of an accident, something a bit beyond my control? How would you build that sentence? I'll help you. First of all, we are going to need the pronoun se. As I said earlier, this always stays se, regardless of whether the subject is singular or plural. Now, after the se, we need the person who experiences the whole thing. So we need the indirect object pronoun. In this case, me, to me. And now we need the verb to agree with the phone, so we conjugate it in the third person singular, which is rompió in the preterite. So, se me rompió, and then just the subject, so se me rompió el móvil. My phone got broken. But what if it were someone else's phone? We'd need the correct indirect object pronoun depending on the person. So let's run through the indirect object pronouns quickly. Me, te, le, so to me, to you singular, or to him or her. And then we have nos, os, les, so to us, to you plural, or to them. So if his or her phone got broken, se le rompió el móvil. Your phone got broken, se te rompió el móvil. Our phone got broken, se nos rompió el móvil. And so on. Pero atención, it's important to say that only certain verbs can work this way. They're actually called double pronominal verbs because they, of course, take two pronouns. Se and the indirect object pronoun. Muy bien, so far we've seen perder and romper, but let's see a couple more. The verb acabar, to finish, can also be used like this. Por ejemplo, you can say, acabé el champú. And that is, I finished or I used up the shampoo. And se me acabó el champú. That would be the shampoo ran out on me. And again, the first one implies responsibility and the second one adds that sense of unpredictability. It happened accidentally. And it's actually the second one that Spanish speakers use more naturally. And a final example with quemar, which means to burn. So if you say, he quemado la cena, I always do that. I burned the dinner, fully on you, that is your fault. But se me ha quemado la cena is more like the dinner burned itself to me, which is the accidental, unpredictable version. And again, this is the one you'll probably hear far more often in real life. So, to bring it all together, both structures are correct, but Spanish speakers tend to use the se plus indirect object pronoun structure more naturally because it captures that sense of something accidental, something that just happened to you. And knowing the difference between the two actually means that you can choose which one to reach for, of course, depending on what you want to convey. Now, here's your challenge. Write your own example in the comments using any of the verbs we've seen. Something that happened to you recently that was completely accidental and absolutely 100% not your fault. I can't wait to read your comments. Y ya está. If this video helped you, please give it a like and subscribe. Nada, nos vemos en el próximo vídeo. Adiós y como siempre, happy coffee breaking.